3 opportunities where they stopped or stalled the planning on going to get bin Laden in 2011, January, February, and March, where they knew he was in the compound in Abbottabad, and they delayed or stopped the planning for the operation. Finally, they did go ahead. Obama did order the SEAL teams in May 2011. But fortunately, one of the pressures acting on the president was the fear that the news that we knew where bin Laden was would leak. And in fact, if you remember, the WikiLeaks had already released the name of the courier that we were tracking to find bin Laden. So the information was out there on the internet. The enemy could have learned it, and that was what finally was used by Hillary Clinton and then CIA Director Laden Mission to push the president to act. But the president was very undecided for much of 2010 and 2011. He didn't like the intelligence. He thought he was looking for something that was absolute slam dunk, 100% certainty. And, of course, except at the end of an episode of CSI, you never get that kind of evidence in intelligence. You get probabilities. Intelligence is, by its nature, uncertain. And he wanted absolute certainty, used as an excuse for delay. And then one of the other things I say in my book about this is a woman named Valerie Jarrett, who is extremely influential as an advisor to President Obama. And she was opposed to any kind of military action against bin Laden because she was afraid it would be another Desert One kind of situation. If you remember back in 1980, there were 52 American hostages held in Tehran, the capital of Iran. And they were ultimately held for 444 days, by the way, more than a year. And every night on the national news, they had, how many days it was that they were held hostage. They were beaten. They were tortured. And there was a rescue mission under the Carter administration. It was, and the location when they were trying to change aircraft was called Desert One. But they had a tragic accident. Several servicemen died, and the rescue effort was called off. And that was really a pivot point in the Carter presidency. After that, it was never the same. The country didn't have the same faith in President Carter's ability to really defend America and to rescue our hostages and to be effective overseas. At the same time, Carter had a failing economy. And Valerie Jarrett, the advisor to Obama, saw a lot of similarities here. High unemployment, just like Carter. Low economic growth, just like Carter. Uncertainty about the U.S. dollar, just like Carter. And now an inability to act overseas. And if the bin Laden mission had gone badly, it would have been exactly like Desert One. She was afraid that was her biggest fear. And it would be a replay of that. And Obama would be a one-term president. So she put political considerations at the top of the agenda. On the other side of the debate was Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, and Laden Mission, who's now Defense Secretary, but at the time was CIA Director. And they kept saying, wait a minute, this guy has killed more than 3,000 Americans. He's a continuing threat to America and her allies around the world. And if the American people know that we had him in our sights and didn't pull the trigger, there's going to be heck to pay. So ultimately, after a lot of internal fighting, arguing back and forth, Obama reluctantly approved the mission. But the key point here is that he stopped or stalled the mission 3 times. And the reason I point that out is because the Obama campaign, has made a very big deal out of going after bin Laden. They call it a gutsy call. They think it's an example of his ability to lead. So if it is an example of his ability to lead, then we should look closely at that decision. And what it really shows is a pattern of indecision, of moodiness, of uncertainty. It's not a gutsy call at all.
Valerie Jarrett, you mentioned a political advisor. I don't mean to sound naive here, but we have always want to give any president the benefit of the doubt when it comes to considerations about national security. In relation to politics and the political impact of the decision not to go after bin Laden, is this normal? Can you compare to other presidents and say, hey, you know what? Bill Clinton didn't take out bin Laden when he had him in his sights. You document that. You talk about that. So tell me, is this just something that we should be shocked at? Because it makes me sick to my stomach. And I think it makes a lot of the audience members and probably yourself sick to your stomach to think that political considerations trumped national security, because that's what it sounds like.
Well, to be fair to Bill Clinton, he was acting against al-Qaeda before 9/11, so he hadn't seen the full destructiveness of the organization. But yes, in one of my earlier books, Losing bin Laden, which had a big influence on the 9/11 Commission report, I document almost a dozen opportunities that Bill Clinton had before 9/11 to take out bin Laden, which he didn't take for various legal and political reasons. And I think that's one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton was driving so hard in the Obama administration to get bin Laden, because she saw the political impact of Bill Clinton's failure to get bin Laden and thought that that should be something that should be considered. But let's think about Valerie Jarrett for a moment. She is one of the most unusual figures in American history. She's not just an advisor to the president. She's the president's mentor. She's been guiding President Obama's career ever since they met at La Loupe Cafe in Chicago in 1991. And not only that, she's also been guiding the career of Michelle Obama. Every important job that Michelle Obama has had since 1991, including her highest paid job at the University of Chicago Medical Center, was thanks to Valerie Jarrett, one way or another. So they owe Valerie Jarrett their careers, their lives, in a way, certainly their livelihoods. Mm-hmm. And so this, usually an advisor is an expert. An advisor is someone who's spent their life studying disarmament policy or water quality or something like that. And the president talks to them about their particular area of expertise. Valerie Jarrett has no expertise except for maybe Chicago politics or Chicago real estate. Her biggest expertise is really in the mind and moods of Barack Obama. She knows how to read him. She knows what his personal needs are. And she's probably the only advisor in American history to go on vacation with the first family. She travels with Michelle and Barack like she's a member of the family. It's a very unusual relationship. We've had advisors in the White House before. I mean, think about Kissinger and Nixon, for example. But we've never had a mentor in the White House acting as a paid advisor. And we've never had somebody who was the mentor of both the president and the first lady. And we've never had a White House staffer go on vacation with the first family. How important is Valerie Jarrett? Well, according to Barack Obama, this is what he told the New York Times in 2009. He said, quote, "I never make an important decision without talking to Valerie first." Think about that. He never makes an important decision without consulting with Valerie Jarrett. This is someone who's never been confirmed by the United States Senate because she's an advisor. She gives very few interviews to the press, and when she does give an interview, it tends to be to Vogue magazine or something like that. She's never really been scrutinized. And she plays this enormous role. And President Obama says he meets with her 2 to 3 times a day.
So does that play into the fact that, I guess, Leading from Behind, by the way, the name of the book, I want to make sure people know it, Leading from Behind, the Reluctant President and the Advisor Who Decide for Him, and the advisors who decide for him. Richard Miniter, our guest. What I'm getting from you, and you've done some, obviously, number of interviews, New York Times bestselling author, that's what your books do. Investigative journalist, you stand by what you write, you back it up. We appreciate that. Here's the question. If Valerie Jarrett is the decision maker, does this play into the fact that without executive experience, President Obama is not the decision maker, and this highlights his lack of experience as an executive, because you're talking about somebody who is moody and making decisions that are based on politics, and having one advisor who doesn't have national security experience yet is advising on the major national security, most consequential national security mission that the president, and certainly over the last number of years, has been a part of.
Well, it's very unusual. I mean, look, the reason why I wrote this book, actually, is I was curious about Barack Obama's ability to lead, right? I mean, here's the guy. He's a fish out of water, right? He's never, his entire life has been at the law professor's lectern or at the committee table, in the state legislature or the U.S. Senate. He's never been a leader. He's never been the guy in the front of the room who says, okay, this is the problem. I want you to do this, Smith, and Jones, I want you to do that, and pointing and taking charge. He's always been a face in the crowd while other people led. And now suddenly he's got the most important executive job in the world. He's president of the United States, leader of the free world. And I just wondered, like, how does he do it? I wasn't out trying to write an anti-Obama book. I was just wondering a basic human question. How does somebody with very little leadership experience, how do they lead? And so I spent a lot of time talking to Democrats who work in the White House or in the federal agencies in the halls of Congress to learn exactly how he does it. And what I discovered was that he relies much more on a close clutch of advisors than in previous presidents. That he often has a very hard time making up his mind. That he gets frustrated very easily. He's famous for walking out of meetings.
Okay, now, Richard, we're up against the break. I don't know how your time is tonight, but if you can't do it tonight, I'd like to have you back on because I know you talk about health care and the decision